Well, the next thing to consider is to generate the script so that the game over text will appear when the Flappy Bird hits the ground or hits a column. So let's get started with that. And the way that we're going to do that is we're going to create a game object. Specifically, we'll say create an empty game object. There it is. And I'm going to rename that. So I'll go over here where it says game object. We'll say game controller. Okay, game controller, there it is. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to generate the script that will apply to the game controller. So we'll say add a component. Let me get rid of this guy over here, which was my previous text that I had typed. I can just go over here to new script, and it says new script behavior. We're going to do this in C#. We can just type in a new name here for our script, and we're just simply going to call it, sorry about that, go back over here, new script, there we go. We're going to call this game control. Alright, go ahead and create and add, and I should have put that into my scripts folder. Where is it? Is it in assets? There it is. So I'll take game control, drag and drop that into scripts, and then click over here in scripts, and there is game control. So let me go ahead and double click that so I can go into mono develop and we can start typing our code. Okay, the first thing I'm going to do is to click over here at the very top and create a public game object reference called game over text. And my intention is to provide, this will be the reference that will connect to this game over text so that I can display the actual game text, which, as you can see here, is not active, right? So what we want to do is we want to encode, make it so that this thing is active and it actually displays. And so I need to provide a reference for that in code. And so what we'll do is we'll set this up as a public object. And then what I'll do is I'll create a new function. So let me go down here, hit enter a couple of times, and there we go. This is going to be a public void function that we'll call bird died. Open and close parentheses, doesn't receive any parameters, open and close curly braces. Now in here, what we'll do is we'll take the game over text, so game over text object, and specifically we're going to change the set active value, which is a boolean, to true. The next thing we're going to do is to create a variable that will track when in fact the game is over. So I'll just create a flag for that, a boolean flag, and we'll just call this game over, and I will set it initially to false. Now if the bird died, then we want to say that the game over is true. We want to change that setting or that flag so that we say trues. And again, we're going to call this function when the bird actually dies. So we will display game over, and then we will change this flag, the game over flag, to true, indicating that the game has now entered into a state of non-play. And then the only way to start the game over again is to actually click the left mouse button to flap the wings, that is, and we can start the game over again. Okay, before we move any further, let's talk about a particular concept or called a singleton, but let me just describe what it is that we're going to do. You know what would be great is if I could call this function from another script, and I can't do that right now. So somewhere over here, if I needed to call, say for example, if there's a collision, if I needed to call this function that belongs to this game controller script, I can't do that right now. What I need is a tool that allows me to attach something to this game controller script so that I can gain access to bird died or this game over variable, which is public, or the game over text, or whatever it is that I want to gain access to that's public. How do I do that? So let me switch over here to my browser here where I already preloaded this topic called the singleton pattern. So let me just go ahead and read this. In software engineering, the singleton pattern is a software design pattern that restricts the instantiation, that means creation, of a class to one object. So right here, what that means is if you have a cookie cutter, which we can think of as a class, you can only create one cookie. If you're doing that, then that cookie cutter is called a singleton pattern. You're only going to create one object. Now, you know how cookie cutters work. You're going to make Thanksgiving cookies or Easter cookies or whatever. You're going to you're going to press down and make multiple cookies, but the singleton pattern says you're only going to instantiate one object. Now, this is useful when exactly one object is needed to coordinate actions across the system. So the concept is sometimes generalized to systems that operate more efficiently when only one object exists, or that restrict the instantiation to a certain number of objects. So this comes from the mathematical concept of a singleton. So, put another way, what we're going to do is we want to be able to have our bird script call a function over here. In order to do that, we're going to use the singleton pattern to give the bird the opportunity to call stuff that is inside of our game control script. So in order to create this singleton in our game, let me go ahead and press enter up here, and we'll type in public static game control, which is the name of our class that we are inside of. We'll just type in instance. So let me explain this. First of all, anytime that you use the word static, in essence what you're saying is keep me alive. Keep me alive throughout the duration of our program. And as instance changes, it's not reset every time we are calling the game control class. So you could think of this as keep me alive and keep me updated. Now, game control, that's just the name of the class that we are inside of. So what we're going to do is we're going to create a public a way of gaining access to the game control class. And so how are we going to do that? Well, we are going to do that with this object called instance. What is instance? Instance is an object of game controller class or game control class. So you have objects, you have classes. Objects are instantiated from classes. This is the cookie. This is the cookie cutter. This says keep me alive throughout the duration of the program. So what we're going to do is if I want to gain access to bird died, this is the mechanism that I'm going to use. If I want to gain access to any public item, such as game over text, which is public, so if I want to gain access to that, or I want to gain access to game over, anything that's public, I can gain access to it via this object called instance. So if this whole idea of class and object doesn't make sense, start off by thinking about it this way. How do I get control of public members inside of this class? This is what you need to type. Public static, so accessible to the public, keep me alive throughout the duration of the program. What is the name of the class and what is the name of the object of that type of class? And this is the guy that's going to be used to gain access to public members. That's how I want you to think about it. The next thing to do is to get rid of the start function. We're not going to use that, but before I do that, let me explain. You already know that the start function is called before we call update or any other function. It's basically used for the initialization, as it says above here, used for the initialization of variables. There are certain things that we need to get done first. But there is a function that is called before start, and it's called awake. Awake is called first, then start is called. So really this is the first function that we can call to do stuff even before we call the start function. And in awake, what I want to do is I want to say, okay, first of all, if there is a game control object that already exists, then don't create any more. Because remember, the idea of the singleton was that you're only going to create one object of this type. That was the singleton pattern that we just talked about. Well, if an object already is in existence, I don't want to create another one. If an object has not been instantiated, then I'm going to go ahead and create one, which I already have done over here. So we're just making sure that only one instance of this particular class exists at any given time. Or actually, for all time, throughout the duration of the existence of our project. Within the awake function, type the following. If instance, which is our object that we've just created, is equal to null, and let's do an open and close curly braces, and we'll type in instance, and we'll assign that the this operator. Let's see here. The this keyword refers to the current instance of the class. Okay, I'll explain that in just a moment. Else, if instance is not equal to this, open and close curly braces, destroy game object. All right, whoops, sorry, semicolon. There we go. We already know that the singleton pattern says you can only have one object of this particular class in existence. That's the whole point. So you know that awake is called before start. Before I do anything, I want to make sure if I do not have an instance, if instance is null, there a particular object of type game control, of class game control does not exist, then what we'll do is we'll assign instance this reserved word this. And so as I type it in again, you'll see that the summary comes up. The this keyword refers to the current instance of the class. So in other words, this is a reference to oneself. And what are we referring to? Well, this game control class. If I already exist, then if instance does not exist, then this game control, I want you to go ahead and assign it myself to this static game control instance. Now, if I do exist, and that's what this means over here, else if instance is not equal to this. So if I already exist, but wait a minute. If I already exist, then that's more than one object, which I don't want because the singleton pattern says I can only have one object of this particular class. So since I already exist, destroy me. Get rid of me. So in essence, I maintain only one object of a particular class with this particular setup. Again, if that doesn't make any sense, it will over time as you play around more and more with classes. So what you're simply going to do is just parrot this. Anytime that you are creating a singleton, and remember what a singleton is, I want access to this public member. I want access to this public member. I want access to this public member. If that's what you want, access to members inside of a particular game control script, then you're going to have to use this. And then that's the singleton. And to enforce the singleton, this is what you're going to have to do. All right, so the next thing to do then is to call this function bird died when the bird has a collision with a 2D object. So we already have within the bird script is dead. We're going to set that to true. We're going to call the particular anim.setTrigger die so that the Flappy Bird looks like the dead sprite that we have created earlier. The next thing I need to do is from here, from this script, I need to call game control specifically with this object and refer to or call the bird died function. How do I do that within bird? So what we're going to do is we're going to type in game control, which is the name of this class. Then within that class, I've already created a singleton object. So that's called instance. And then dot, I can call anything that's public. Well, in this case, here it is, bird died. That's the name of my function. What is it? It's a public function, doesn't return anything. Here's the name of the function, doesn't receive any parameters. So double click that, and then just simply open and close parentheses and semicolon. Because you'll see over here, this function doesn't receive anything, doesn't return anything. You call me, and what do? I take that game over text and I'll set it to true, and then I also change the state, which is this variable over here, game over. I change that from false to true. The game is over, so I know what state I'm in terms of the game. But notice the beauty of this singleton perspective, the singleton idea is that we've created an instance that allows me, where am I? Sorry about that. I double-clicked and this happened. I have this object that allows me access to public members, and now I can in fact call one of those members, which is bird died, when I have a collision. So let me save my work here. So I'm going to say save, game control, save, and let me switch back over here to Unity, and let's see what happens. So let me play, and I'm going to go over here, get ready to click the mouse really fast here. Uh-oh, all compiler errors have to be fixed. Uh-oh, let's see what happened here. So let me see here before you enter into play mode. Did I do something wrong here? So let me go back to Mono Develop, and let's see if I can find out what happened here. So first of all, created the singleton. Let's see here. This code looks okay. Everything else looks okay. Did I do something wrong in here? Game control.burn instance died. It looks okay. Well, let me go back over here to the game control, and I'm going to select build and build all. Aha, there's the problem. Capital G. Let me double click this game object lowercase. All right. Game object lowercase. What is this? Okay, summary. The game object, this component is attached to. A component is always attached to a game object. So I wanted lowercase g, not capital G. The game object that is associated with the game control. That's what I wanted to type. All right, so I'm typing too fast. Let's see what happens when I build all now. Does that error go away? Build successful. Okay, now we're okay. Sorry about that. Lowercase g. Let me save my work. So I already saved it. That's fine. How about bird? Did I save it? Yep, I did. So let's switch over here to Unity. And another thing I forgot before I ran, I shouldn't have done this, but in game control, I forgot to drag and drop the game over text to where it says game over text, because remember, I'm creating a reference in game control, and here it is. So I want this thing to refer to specifically this game over text. So I need to drag and drop this with my game controller selected. I need to drag and drop this into where it says game over text. Okay. And then you'll also notice that I created another variable called game over. It is of type Boolean, and that's what this represents right here. So I could click that or not click that. I'm not going to click this because I want initially for the game over text to be false, and that's the whole point of this statement over here. Game over, set it to false. When we start the game, it's not false. It's not, I'm sorry, it's not game over, it's game on, right? So the game over variable or the game over Boolean variable should be set to false. It's only when we lose, when the bird dies, that we set the game over to the state of true. Okay, so now that we've done that, let's play. Okay, game over, start to flap to restart. Okay, so that's cool because immediately when we died, this text appears. So let's try that again. And let me see if I can start clicking right now. Okay, so everything is working fine. As soon as we die, bam, this appears. Game over, flap to restart. Let me get out of game mode. The next thing to consider is when we flap after we've died. So let me go ahead and play the game again. Okay, so now the game over, flap to restart. So I'm going to click the mouse, nothing happens. I've just flapped, right? Clicking the mouse, the left mouse button is flapping. what I want to happen is that we're restarting when I flap. Listen to this, right? Nothing's happening. So let me stop. Let's go back over here to MonoDevelop, specifically in the game control script. And what we're going to do is in update, which you know is called once per frame, we're going to say, well, first of all, if the game is over and the user clicked the left mouse button, then let's go ahead and redisplay this scene. So let me go back over here. And remember, we created a scenes folder, and the main scene is what we saved. We only have this one scene. We called it main scene. So in essence, what I need to do is I need to reload this scene and start all over again. All right, so what we're going to do is in update, we'll say if the game is over, so if game over, if that variable is true, and, okay, so a logical and operator in C# are the two ampersands. In fact, that's the case for Java and C++ and many other languages. It's the two ampersands means the AND operator. So if this is true and if this is true, then we're going to do some code. Well, what's the second part? Well, if I click the left mouse button, so that's if input rather, get mouse button down, and specifically the left mouse button. So that means 0. And open and close curly braces. So if the user clicked the left mouse button, and if the state we are in is the game over state, which I just showed you over here, we start over here, and we are in the game over state now. So this variable has been set to true. Let me do this here. Start this game over state. Now we're in the game over state. Did you see that? As soon as we died, the game over state activated. All right. So if these two things have happened, then what I want to do is I want to reload the scene. Well, in order to reload the scene, I need to include something else here. So we're going to type in using Unity engine dot scene management. And what this will allow us to do is to gain access to the scene manager so that I can reload this scene. Now let's click inside of our if statement and load our scene, specifically load our currently active scene. And what is the currently active scene? It's this scene right here. It's our main scene. So here's how we'll do that. We'll say scene manager dot load scene, open parens, scene manager dot get active scene, open and close parens, dot build index. So what this is saying is whatever the currently active scene is, go ahead and load it. In essence, when the game is over and the user has clicked the left mouse button, which in other words we're flapping, right? That's what this thing is saying. When the game over, it says flap. Okay, so when we flap, we're going to say, oh, we're going to notice that the game is over. The user has clicked the left mouse button. So what do we want to do? Reload the scene. By the way, reload the active scene, and in this case, we only have the one scene. So we're just simply going to reload that one given scene. Okay, we can either hit Command S or we can go to File, Save. Make sure our code is saved. Let me see Bird. I don't think I did anything there, so I don't have to save. We're good. Let's go back over here to Unity and let's see what happens. I'm going to go into the game mode. Okay, flap to restart. Beautiful. Flap to restart. This time I'll see if I can keep alive a little bit longer. And now drop, flap to restart. This is beautiful. So what we're saying here, back in our code, if the user, game control, if we are in the game over state and the user has clicked the left mouse button, then we're going to reload the scene. And let's see that again. Nice. Now, hear that? I'm right clicking. Oh, I think I wrote a little bit too hard, so that I ended up left clicking accidentally. When I right click, nothing's supposed to happen. Only when I left click is something going to happen, and that's because That 0 right there for the get mouse button down, the 0 represents the left mouse button. Cool.